In this video, I'm going to cover the 3 rules that you need to know. And I came up with these because as I started building my business and pursuing other interests, it's very easy to get overwhelmed or have all these projects to work on and you're not quite sure which ones to pursue. I'm sure you can agree with me that it would always be nice to have an extra 10 or 20 hours a day, or to be able to hit the pause button on the world while everything else is paused, but you can go out there and keep doing your work or working towards your goals. Well, unfortunately, we don't have that remote control and there's no way for us to get more time throughout the day. And so these 3 rules will help you not get overwhelmed and make sure you don't get off track, because they'll help you focus on those important activities or those important projects to help you reach your goal. The first rule is the 80-20 rule. It's also known as Pareto's principle. Pareto is a gentleman who identified this. Essentially what the 80-20 rule says is that about 80% of the results or 80% of the outcome will come from about 20% of the activities. And if you've ever read any business or sales books, you've probably seen the authors reference this when it comes to management or sales divisions. A lot of times you'll see sales managers say that about 80% of their sales come from about 20% of their results. Or if you look at companies, you'll see a lot of times the majority of their sales or the majority of their revenues come from 1 or 2 or 3 key products. Things aren't always proportional. And what sticks in my mind is looking at Apple. You know, Apple has different computers, different software, different things, but what's their biggest seller? It's the iPhone and the iPad. I forget, what percentage of revenue those things make up for, but those are two products in their product lines, but they make up for a lot of their revenue. And that's the 80-20 rule in action right there. Now, is it always 80-20? No, it's not. Sometimes it's more, sometimes it's less. And actually what I've seen as technology has grown the last decade, it seems that those even get skewed more. A lot of times it's like 90-10 or 95-5. So I want you to take away with this is that you're going to have to identify those key activities or those key projects that will bring you the most results or the biggest bang for your buck, so to speak. And if you want to research more on this, go spend a few minutes on Google and just search for 80-20 rule. There's a lot of great free information out there and it's very, very interesting stuff to learn, but it's so powerful. Now the second rule I want to cover is the KISS principle, the keep it simple silly. And I put this in here because a lot of times when you start a new project or a new business or you start working on a new area and you start coming up with ways to get past it or figure it out, I think as humans, a lot of times we like to overcomplicate things. We like to make things harder than they really are. I know I do. So I always take a step back and say, okay, is there any way I can simplify this? What can I do to make this even more simple? And this is where a lot of times I'll work with my business partner, Jason Wells, and say, okay, I had this idea and I wrote up this outline, look it over and tell me your thoughts on there and let me know what fat we can cut out. So rule number 2 is KISS, keep it simple, silly. And the third rule is that action always trumps perfection. I don't want you to worry about being perfect because when it comes to doing this business and most things in life, being perfect doesn't matter. You've seen me in this video and other videos. Have I been a perfect speaker? No, I have not. I have stuttered a word here and there. I've said some ums. I've said some you knows. And I have some things like that. You know what? That's fine. That's the way it is. Now, I could spend 50 times more time on this video to make it perfect so I don't have those things in there, but there's really no point to it. Doing a good job and getting the information out to you does you a lot more and does a lot more for my business than me spending hours and hours and actually days and days and days in making it perfect. And one of the ways I always put this in perspective is what's the worst case scenario that will happen if I'm not perfect when I do something in my business. I might have to re-record a video. Someone might say no to me. I might get embarrassed. In the grand scheme, that's not really that bad. And what I always think about is a few years ago, I took a pretty wild canoe trip with a couple friends from college in northern Canada. And what we did, we took actually one of those water planes where they strapped the canoe to the side pontoon of the plane. It's a 4-seater plane. We flew, they dropped us off on a lake, and then we had our GPS coordinates on where we picked up 7 days later. And so it was a canoe camping trip, but there's also some whitewater in there. And if we ran into issues out there, we weren't close to anywhere. In fact, we had a satellite phone, and the soonest someone could come out to us was 24 hours. And if we were in a bad spot of the water where it was, too small, the water plane couldn't land to pick us up or give supplies, so we'd have to hike out, miles or days to go somewhere else. So it was a very remote situation. And I remember at this one point, we were going through this series of rapids to get to our campsite, and the rapids in themselves weren't that hard. But the issue was that about 200 feet where the rapids ended and the campsite began, there was like a 30-foot waterfall. Now, that's where perfection counted and being perfect really mattered, because if we flipped in those rapids upstream and swam in those waterfalls, we were in deep trouble. So we spent a lot of time figuring out where we wanted to go, what run to take on, and exactly where to put our canoes. And then we also set up some safety plans as well, so if a canoe did flip or someone got stuck, there'd be a way to save the person and recover the equipment before anything went over the waterfalls. Well, I'm happy to say that we had no issues there, and nothing or no one actually got down the waterfalls. But that's where perfection matters in those life-threatening situations like that. Perfection doesn't matter when it comes to doing your business. So action always trumps perfection. You'll hear me say this again and again in future training videos, and if you attend any of my training calls. And I like to share this quote with you on perfection. I'm not a big quote person, but this one I read a couple years ago and just stuck with me. When you aim for perfection, you discover it's a moving target. And I take that away as when you try to get that perfection, you'll never get there, because you can always get better, you can always get better, you can always get better, and you reach the point of diminishing returns. And yes, you could keep making things better and better and better, but what results you're getting for it? Probably not much. So I'll wrap up this video. I want you to remember these rules, because these are the rules that I use every day, every time I start a project, every time I start a business, and every time I work with someone. These rules are in the back of my mind. They help me stay on track. They help me stay on the important activities that will have the biggest impact on my bottom line. And so I really hope you study these and you take them to heart.